So hello, dear internet audience of Just Goes to Town. We're presenting another video from the series we do for our this year's edition, Just Goes to Town 2021. And I have a pleasure to invite here my dear friend and great reed player, saxophone, clarinet player, and composer from Germany, Frank Gratkowski. Hello, Frank.
Hello, Michal.
And Frank is gonna be one of the soloists at our very special concert for this year, which is the last concert on Saturday, 16th of October at the Filharmonií Hradeckou, which gonna be concert of the compositions of the famous German composer Heiner Goebbels, but also of some Czech premieres by Peter Graham and Michal Nejtek. And Frank is going to play on one of the pieces by Heiner, and also on the brand new piece by Michal Nejtek, which is going to be composed for Frank and the orchestra. So I would start with the question which I prepared for you, and that's let's start with what have brought you to become a jazz musician, and the second question would be like what opened you a door to the experimental avant-garde forms of playing, because you at least as far as I know, like you're kind of active more in the field of rather experimental way of jazz than the mainstream jazz, let's say. So
what made me become a jazz? I was listening to music a lot when I was young. I had these times where I was listening 6 hours nonstop to music, and at some point it became jazzy music or more jazz music. It was like it went through, let's say, Santana when he did some more jazz projects, and then later on Weather Report, and then later on I was into Keith Jarrett and these people, so became interested in jazz. But I also had the very early record I remember I had was Circle with Anthony Braxton, Dave Holland, Barry Altune, and Chick Corea. So Braxton is the one who stays still for me as a very, very strong influence. So at some point I listened to these people and I thought, wow, they tell me their life story. And then I thought, I think I have something to tell too, but I had no clue what that would be. So I just wanted to learn an instrument, and I was thinking about piano, but that was kind of impossible because I didn't have a piano and I couldn't ask my parents to get a piano. So, and then saxophone turned out, and that's how it felt like, yeah, I want to play saxophone. I was actually thinking about soprano saxophone, but then people said, no, don't start on the soprano. So I basically started on tenor, added the soprano later, moved to alto. Now I tossed the soprano too, because Steve Lacy's influence became too strong. And then the clarinet took over to take that part. So yeah, but that was the reason I started playing jazz. I wanted to express myself. It was for me a ventil for my emotional things I couldn't, as a young boy, I couldn't really live that, let's say. And then I become, the experimental part was almost all the time there, because I remember when I was still, I born in Hamburg and I grew up there, and I had bands in Hamburg which were, yeah, there was one band where we tried some kind of Weather Report type of stuff, and then what was the other? There was this one band where one guy studied with Carl Berger in Woodstock and was into this harmonic Ornette Coleman music. But I didn't know anything about Ornette Coleman. By that time, I played bebop. I wanted to play like Charlie Mariano was my first hero, and then also there was Charlie Parker influence and Cannonball Adderley and people like that. And I just I came to this band, and suddenly I had no model what to do, because I didn't know about Ornette's music. So I heard a recording of it, and that was the first time I heard myself. So because I couldn't just copy bebop licks, it wouldn't make any sense. So I just played what I thought which fits to the music. And that was a very, very important moment for me because, yeah, I was looking for myself somehow in music. And from that moment on, I more or less was more influenced in different music. I had different bands, but everything was not mainstream, I would say, except the bands I made some money with playing standards on parties or stuff like that. But, and when I studied jazz in Cologne at the conservatory, and I was always the exotic guy. I was doing the weird stuff. So I was not interested in traditional big band playing. I had to do it for a while though, but then in the same time I got asked to play with more advanced players very early, and so because they thought, okay, he has a personality. He's not just playing jazz. And then I think this whole contemporary music became very important for me because it's some kind of a European tradition, which makes like the jazz tradition on one hand, and then this European tradition. And later on, when people ask me what I'm doing, I said, like, I'm trying to combine ideas of contemporary music with the meaning of jazz, or the Spielhaltung would be the German word for it, which is more some kind of not to play it like let's say da, 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 very clear and shit, but more like a jazz musician would play it, more in the flow, let's say, where things have not to be precise and perfect. They can also be bended a little bit.
Good. And like, what is your relation to the jazz tradition now? Also, like, we were speaking about like you being a teacher before, and like, do you think it's still important for young musicians to learn the jazz tradition, whatever it means? And also, like, what do you think is like, what does someone to make a jazz musician, or what does it mean to be a jazz musician nowadays? Like, do you think the perspective has changed, or it's still like it is still important to like pass all these, like, you know, whatever layers to absorb to be a complex jazz musician, like to just afford to play that music or play improvised music?
Okay, in the first place, I'm not so sure if I'm a jazz musician anymore. I'm a musician, and I don't like styles. Like Don Cherry once said, style is the death of creativity. So I like that quote, because what is jazz? For me, jazz is a way to play something. It's not a style.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, or in that way, I would say I still do jazz. But when I listen to whatever Wynton Marsalis, then I said, I'm not interested in jazz anymore, because that's not what I'm interested in. So jazz for me is as an influence very important. If students need to do jazz, I don't know. I mean, they have to do something. They have to build their ability to make music on something. And I think it's everybody's decision what it is. In order to do improvised music, you don't need to do jazz. You can have other influence. You can also have contemporary music as an influence, or folk music, or whatever. I mean, half of the folk music is improvised, or at least partly. So as a teacher, I try to figure out what the student wants in the first place, in which direction he wants to go. So if he wants to go in the artistic direction, I think what you need as an artist is you need the technique to say what you want to say as an artist. So that means I don't need to be able to play Charlie Parker patterns, especially when I'm not interested in playing jazz time, whatever stuff. And I had students like Elisabeth Coudot, cellist, who's he did solo record on Leo Records and her own ensemble, and she's leading her own, so she's now playing with Zeitkratzer. She can't play standards properly, but in the school we said, okay, you know, just show that you maybe can do it and then do your shit, you know, because I knew she will survive anyway. So why does she need to play jazz standards? You know, it's definitely not necessary for her. For other students, it might be necessary, you know. So it's but it's more technical and phrasing. I just had a discussion with one student, you know, who said, yeah, Anthony Braxton doesn't play, can't play. And I said, can you play like Braxton? I mean, it's like this, because he doesn't phrase right, you know. And it was a student from England who's like incredible virtuosic, you know. But I don't think that he has a very interesting sound. So the other thing. So it's
Right.
It's everybody's personal decision where to go and what to do. And so I think you have to think about music. You have to think about yourself. You have to, you know, look into yourself and then try to figure out what do I want to say, and that can change on the path. So maybe you start playing a little jazz and see, is that something for me? Maybe it's even Dixieland. Why not? You know, it doesn't have to be bebop. It's both old music or swing or whatever, you know. And then you try to develop something. For me, it's very important to give the people a very, very diverse information of music. I tell people always, like, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Arnold Schoenberg, they do the same. And they look at me, why do they do the same? I mean, they, you know, they found a way, they found out what they wanted to say and to express, and they expressed that very, very well. And so, and they did it in with different tools, because one was interested in that tool and the other one was interested in that tool. So one was a composer and writes for string quartet or whatever, orchestra. The other one did the same thing on guitar with his fellow musicians. And so for me, everything became one. It's from the question I'm asking myself always is, what is the essence of good music? Which is also related to my taste in a way. And I try to teach that my students and find them, first question that every new student gets is, what do you want? You know, what do you want to say? And if they don't know that, then I ask you, but you want to play saxophone? Yes. So then practice anything. So what you prefer? Scales, Bach, Charlie Parker, or, you know, Lenny Tristano, or just sound experiments, and then you can work from that and try to shape it and make it clear, because it's about clear statements.
Right. Yeah, you've mentioned the contemporary music, and that's kind of leading me to another question, because it's been quite a topic for this year's festival. The connection between the contemporary or written contemporary music with the improvised music or jazz music or whatever. Like we even like have this discussion with some of the composers later this month about like the potential of the combination. Because in Czech Republic, I feel that it's still kind of separated the words. Like it's more like it's more and more common that the jazz musicians are involved in the contemporary music projects and vice versa. But I see this trend, especially but also like in European, but also in American jazz scene recently, that the contemporary music is a big inspiration for the projects. Like many of them, like Anna Weber, this saxophone player who is actually German, I guess. But also a lot of other projects. I saw some concerts at the Jazz Fest Berlin last year, I mean, and some of them were really like aesthetically more sounding like contemporary classical music than American mainstream jazz music. So I would just ask you, like, what is your experience with the contemporary music, or what is your ideas about this like connection, or have you thought of this? Because I know you're also composed like music which is written basically from the beginning to the end. So what do you think about this, or like what brought you to write music for ensemble or like contemporary classical setups or ensembles?
It's, for me, I think there is the difference between improvisation and composition is, for me, just a time difference. So improvisation, I think for me, improvisation is one part of composing, one aspect of composing. And so that's why what I'm doing, I often call it instant composing, because it's not random at all for me. It is not, so I try to get something which has a shape, which has some kind of a meaning, which can be anything. So that's a long, yeah. But so the contemporary music people, if I go back to the 60s, where there was like the Darmstadt time, like after the post-World War, so basically, these people were so much like doing research of possibilities, what music can be, how far they can go with music, and what can they do. I mean, John Cage wrote the Pulse, you know, like so that, which is almost the end, you know,
right.
And so all these ideas that they spend their whole life, like these composers, like some of the contemporary composers, to really think what's possible, what can I do. And of course, jazz musicians always get attracted by that. And also, I mean, the influence, it's very simple. Coltrane was a big Stravinsky fan. Charlie Parker too, but Charlie Parker wanted composition lessons with Edgar Varese. So they all these jazz musicians were, like, let's say, contemporary jazz musicians by that time, were always very aware of what was going on in the contemporary music of their time. Also different music, like John Coltrane had letter contact with Ravi Shankar, so it was into Indian music and African music anyway, because he was African American. so he had this relation, and I think it was always there. It's just not so obvious. There was also this third stream, which was basically classical music meets contemporary music. Like Gunther Schuller was one of the main figures in that time. So I think there's not a big change. I mean, every jazz musician who, let's say, invented something new or found a new style didn't get it out of the jazz. Right. Was Sonny Rollins was interested in calypso music. Stan Getz started playing bossa nova music. Charlie Parker studied this. They all studied, like John McLaughlin studied Scriabin in order for harmony. All these people were very open and very. If you go to the Art Ensemble of Chicago, gets everywhere, all over the place. And Joseph Jarman, for instance, was the first one who worked together with John Cage as a jazz musician. Mm-hmm. So, and the same, like if you go to Sun Ra, it's completely all over the place. I mean, it's like for me, these people, I just read this, still read the biography of Sun Ra, and it's insane. What he was totally into pop music by his time, you know, and then doing arrangements of that, and then but he had these visions about electronic music, electronic instruments will be able to play sounds you've never heard before, which was true, but that was way before the synthesizer came up, you know. So they were open, and they were not locked into the idea of what jazz is. I mean, Duke Ellington is like, when you listen to the 20s, like the very first Duke Ellington stuff, the jungle groove stuff, and you would play it today, it would still be avant-garde. Yeah. Or when you listen to this Tiger Rag record recording with Charlie Parker and Lenny Tristano and Dizzy Gillespie, and it's like it was a metronome all-stars where they were voted the best jazz musicians in the world, like modern jazz musicians, and they had this competition with these Dixieland musicians, and they're supposed to play the same tune, so they decided to play Tiger Rag, and they play a version of Tiger Rag which is insane. I mean, it's like, so there's like Max Roach playing a backbeat, which is almost rock groove. Then it's like the guitar is comping simultaneously with the piano, and it's far out. So I think, and that's also contemporary music. It's just that the contemporary classical music, especially in the Western world, because in America it was always different in a way. They come with this intellectual way of thinking, and they try to keep things in their box in a way to save. Yeah, when there's too much improvisation coming into contemporary music, then the question is, why is there a composer needed? So I think the composer, most of the composers are a little bit afraid to let too much in, like openness in their pieces, because they lose their job, maybe, you know. And it's, I think in Germany, it's a point that there is two different money pots, like there's money for contemporary music and there's money for jazz, maybe some money for jazz. And they try to divide that somehow and have this in their scene. I mean, I'm working partly in both scenes, so because I do a lot of workshops with contemporary music. I do now in September, I will do this Klangspuren Festival in Austria, where I'm the improviser in residence. And I do with the Ensemble Modern is doing a new music academy there, the IEMA, International Academy for Contemporary Music. And I do, and they include improvisation in the festival, and I'm doing an improvised concert with the whole orchestra. I still don't know what to do with them, because some of them might be experienced with improvised music, others not, but they definitely have zero jazz background. So it will be something, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So it's I think it's important for every style, let's say, or kind of music, to be open up and try to, because that's the only chance the music has. I mean, the jazz has this moment where you think, okay, but where's the jazz going? Where's a figure like Ellington, a figure like Coltrane, like Sonny Rollins? There is no one like that at the moment, I would say. There might be some people, and maybe there's some people growing, and they are very good players, but it's a difficult time we live in, because in the early times, people had a vision about a better world, and they tried to express that with music. And now the question is, where is that better world? What is, because if you look at the world, everybody thinks, okay, how can we survive to make it not too bad too fast, you know? So it's a tricky time, you know? I mean, the most creative time was maybe past Second World War, where everything was down. In Europe, everything was like gone, and then they start building things from zero, and they thought, well, why not build the music from zero again, you know?
Right.
And then there was this flower power time, or the whole student movement, also in America and California, and that triggered art in all kinds of art, and openness and things. And these triggers are at the moment, let's say, missing a little bit. That's at least my viewpoint of it. So it's very hard to find something. Also, a very dangerous thing is the internet, I think, the whole distraction we live in these days. Because maybe to become and really find something as an artist, maybe it's good to go somewhere in the mountains, in a house for 2 years, no connections to the outer world, and just focus on what do I want to do, you know?
Right. Yeah, you mentioned this guy who is virtuoso, but you don't I mean, like, you don't appreciate his music that much. Like, it brings me to this thing that, like, compared to the period you mentioned, like the 60s, or like after war even, like there's probably much more people nowadays who are like virtuosic musicians, like who, like, the techniques are probably like much more developed and stuff, but still, as you said, like, there is no Sonny Rollinses and Charlie Parkers anymore. Like, what do you think is or like, what for you personally is how would you describe the thing which makes the musician special to you? You know, like, not in terms of how insanely brilliant and virtuosic he is or she is, but in terms of what you like what is the important for you in someone's music?
Finding yourself. I mean, it's in the very end, it's about jazz, at least. It's about personality, and to become a strong personality, you have to find out what you are, and in a way you have to accept what you are and willing to let that thing grow in you, the personal aspect. And the other thing is you shouldn't be afraid. I think there's like, and you shouldn't think what people think about it. So because it doesn't help at all. I mean, you can't make it right for everyone anyway. So I just try to do what I do, and I don't think in any way it's what people might think. Maybe later on I think about it, but more like a reflection. But it wouldn't change my music, I think, because I see myself as an audience, and I just want to make me happy as a listener. When I like it, it's good. And if other people like it or not like it, it's more or less their problem. I mean, I might try to explain it to some people when they are interested, but in general, it's me, and it's a very, very selfish thing, maybe. But I think when you are honest to yourself, when you are true, some people say true in a way, then it will reach people. Not the people, not everybody, no? Because when you look at everybody, I mean, the most successful saxophonist on the world is Kenny G, you know? And so I don't want to play like him.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, and what about do you still listen music, like other people's music? Or because it can also be, you know, you said that it's important to find your own voice, but what about the inspiration from outside? Like, is it dangerous, or is it necessary, or what do you think? Or do you still feel inspired by other people's music, or even like recent music?
Yes, I'm totally, I listen a lot to other music also because I'm a teacher and I have to know what's going on in a way. But also for myself, I'm always looking for music I don't know. So I'm using recent. So I'm listening a lot, and I got this Apple Music abonnement to just be able to move and listen to all kinds. There's a lot of contemporary music, but also what I'm listening to is like ethnologic music all over the place. I found some beautiful music recently, which I never heard before, by reading a book about African music. It was from Tanzania, some Wagogo music, and I'm listening to Tibetan music recently again, but I also listened to went to a whole bunch of Jimi Hendrix stuff because of his birthday, and recently I also listened to my old rock backgrounds, what I listened to when I was young, so like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, and then also some new stuff like Anna Weber, for instance. I listened to some of her stuff recently because she's interesting, she's good, and there is some good players and people who. What I'm always inspired is the creativity in people. So I have there's one. She wasn't my student, but I was in the jury, and she just got a prize. Who's really interesting. In a way, it's Louise Volkmann. She's a young composer and saxophonist in Cologne. She lives in Cologne, and she was in Paris before. And for me, it was like when I listened to all these to this stuff they send in to apply for this grant. I was so blown away by her creativity. It was like insane. I mean, it's like, wow, she's all over the place and never does anything normal. Okay. I would say. No? So yeah, there is always, you have to be awake and you have to look around. And of course you can say it's too much. I don't want any distraction. I'm going, it's not the way I work, because my, let's say, most important influence to find myself in music was reading James Joyce Ulysses. And when I also read his biography, which is 2,000 pages long or almost, and also try to work on Finnegan's Wake. And for me, he's using everything. So he was aware of, like, he was reading all kinds of literature. He was learning Danish in order to learn to read Danish authors in original, and so he's basically eating the whole everything, or as much as he can do, and then he still creates something completely new out of it. Like using Ulysses is the form of the Odyssey of Homer, but he puts totally other things in it, and there is inner structures and inner structure. It goes. It's like a perfect, unbelievable symphony in a way, or a huge poem, like like 1,000 and I don't know how many pages long poem. And it's everything. It's almost also just life. It's, for me, it is like so big that I could people spend their whole life on analyzing it and working on it. And this is like what I'm into. So he finds this piece of art, well, and that could be a piece of music, where you can listen to it thousands of times, and every time you hear something else. Mm-hmm. That's what I try in music too, in a way. I mean, I can't say that I totally succeed with it, but if you take my whole oeuvre, it's getting there. It would be nice to get everything done in one piece, but I think that's so for me, it is important to listen to other stuff and get influence from us. But it's for me also listening to birds, listening to noise backgrounds of street cars, like just like John Cage said, like, yeah, he prefers to listen to, for him it's more interesting to listen to the street than to compose music. So it is yeah, it's also, I'm interested in Zen in some way, and I'm meditating and I'm doing yoga again, luckily. And for me, everything becomes one. I did Aikido for a long time, and for me, Aikido was very, very close to improvising. And although it's with very fixed forms you practice, but this is like, of course, you need tools in order to improvise. You can't just improvise out of nothing. If I never heard a pitch, I don't know how to produce a pitch. I maybe find pitch, but then I define it, and as soon as I define it, I heard it, and then I reproduce it. So the memory is always an aspect, and then it's yeah, and then you can try to find ways to expand that, and there's different approaches to that, which is eating all kinds of stuff and melting it into something new, or finding systems to create things like serial music or things, or throwing dices like James Joyce did, John Cage did. There's tons of, I use the computer to generate music sometimes. I also compose with statistics, but then in the other time I just sing something on my phone and transcribe it. And then the next time I use a normal composing system. So I'm trying out everything. For me, it's nothing. I just look around and try to find things I don't know, but what I like, hopefully.
Great answer. You kind of predicted my question. Do you find inspiration elsewhere besides music? So we got this one.
Everywhere. For me, making music is a mirror of life in a way. Right. It's my mirror of my viewpoint of life, and as more as I learned to accept things, also like accept myself, accept my own voice, and listening to. For me, everything is like music related is to listen, to learn to listen. Because what I also found out is the main problem is they don't listen. They even don't listen to themselves. Every student I tell, okay, play a note. Then I said, play the same note again. So play it exactly the same way. So what was the difference? Because you're not able to play the same thing twice, but you have to learn to hear the difference. You have to learn to hear closer, hear more, have an imagination of what you want to do, because what the people are missing is this kind of imagination, because they come up with concepts, but the concepts are only good for finding new things to trigger something, and maybe, but yeah, playing a jazz solo is not just playing scales or playing, you know, and that's what people like Sonny Rollins. He's all over the place. He plays everything, and but he had an incredible imagination of things. So all my students have to sing, and they hate that. Almost everybody hates that, you know, because when you sing, you need an imagination in order to do so.
Right.
So I think it's all about listening. I just had this discussion yesterday with an ensemble I teach where they asked me that question is like what should they work on, you know? And I said, listening. And how do they improvise better? And I said, don't think, listen. You should listen. And you also should listen to something you imagine, like you can listen to some inner vision of music you have in your mind. And once you have one, and maybe it's just one pitch, then play that or try to play that. And when you fail, then work on exactly that you get it done more and more, get closer. I don't play every night. I can't play every pitch I hear immediately, but I'm getting better and I'm working on it in a way. Sometimes it's great to make a mistake, but that's a different point about it.
Right, right. Good. Yeah, let's just for a while get to the actual festival concert with you. And I would ask you two questions. Like first is Michal Nejtek, the composer, is writing a premiere for you, and I'm interested in if this a common experience for you. Like, have you worked this way before, like that someone would write the composition for you, or have you worked with the classical orchestra as the soloist before? And then the second question would be connected with the other composer, which is Heiner Goebbels. Like, what is your relation to his music? Are you experienced with like either playing or listening of his music before?
Okay, it's so many questions at once. So where to start?
So, yeah, let's start with the premiere thing. Like,
okay, so I yeah, it happened not with an orchestra. I was just thinking, have I been a soloist with an orchestra? I have been some kind of a soloist in a jazz orchestra with 3 soloists actually. It was a jazz orchestra, was a piece by Michael Hamel, and the radio orchestra in Cologne was there. But that was not so, let's say it wasn't a saxophone concerto. There were just 3 jazz musicians involved and they had some improvisational parts in it. Then I had a guy who wrote a big band piece for me, which was not a really normal big band piece. That was in America and South Carolina a long time ago. So he did this, I think it was his master or whatever. And he asked if he could invite me from Germany to come over to, and he could write a piece for me, which was one where he explicitly used my techniques also. As I mean, he's used, so nobody else could perform it at the end, actually. That's a long time ago. And I was just thinking, I was a soloist in with the Musikfabrik NRW, but that was the Sun Ra project. Yeah, that's basically it, I guess. Was
what about like the second question, like the Heiner Goebbels? Like, what is your connection?
I knew his music not very deeply, let's say, and I recently listened to some more stuff. It's funny, I know Heiner Goebbels. The first time I heard him, he was playing with Alfred Hart as a duo, which was maybe 83, 85 or something like that. I don't know. I was still in Hamburg and there was this festival and this concert stuck in my mind. I really enjoyed it. It was really fantastic. So that was my first encounter with Heiner Goebbels, also Alfred Hart, and I met him in Korea afterwards. It was also quite interesting. And then, yes, here and there came some music which I listened to, and then of his music. And recently, after we had this phone call, also I was actually listening more to stuff, also because I was interested in because I think the piece I'm about to play is also part of a larger piece in a certain way. And I think for David Moss is involved, and I know David Moss from a long time ago where we played also together. So I was just basically doing research in a way of learning, understanding, finding more out about music. And it is I definitely have a different aesthetic in composing than he has, but that's totally fine, you know? And I like the piece he which I'm supposed to play, so the orchestra backgrounds, and so I totally can relate to it, and looking forward to it. It's like I'm in this moment where I'm not sure if I should think about it or not, because when I think about it, I'm not improvising anymore. And that's in the first place. I remember I asked you not to send me the version with Hannes Bauer, which was the original or the first version. And but then Heiner sent it to me anyway. So I listened to it and I said, wow, he's doing a good job. You know? So now I have this model and I have to get myself out of it at the same time, you know, and find my personal way to play the piece. For me, it's very, that's another point about this composition and improvisation. It's a very different thing to improvise or to compose, or to play composed music and play improvised music. It's very, for me, it's almost like different mind settings. And so for me, it never worked to combine free improv music and composed music. And I mean, for myself, like half, like where you play a piece and then you play one piece completely free. Mm-hmm. Because when I play total free improv concert, I have a complete different mind setting than I play tunes with improvisation included. And this problem occurs here too, because I could prepare myself to play the piece, or I can say, no, I try to go on stage tabula rasa, zero, and improvise something which I didn't plan up front and decide in that moment and see how the thing goes. And I'm still not sure which way I will want to take, you know, because I hate repeating myself. And so I have to play in the rehearsal very bad in order to play good on the concert.
And were you instructed by Heiner in this way? Like, did he did he kind of advise you the one or the other kind of perspective?
No, he didn't advise me by anything. He just said he wouldn't like any jazz phrasing.
Right. Yeah, that's what.
So he mentioned that, you know, which is okay, you know, and I have no problem fulfilling that request, you know. It's I might work a little bit on the structures of the orchestra in a way of anticipating aspects of it, maybe. So, but I'm still don't know. I mean, it's for me too early to work on it in a way. But maybe it's good to work on it now and then forget it again. It's another aspect. You know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just curious. Yeah.
Cool. So let's just finish with the last question. And there would be like, what are your recent plans, projects, besides of the festival, of course, what you're working on? And it can be also like more general, like it can be like long-term goals or projects, or like abstract or concrete, whatever you're.
I mean, in the short term, it's this orchestra workshop I do in Austria with the Ensemble Modern Academy. Working with bands, I just released a new record with a more rock influenced band, the Resonators, which is some young guys from Cologne. It's on Bandcamp so far. It's also on the streaming things. Mm-hmm. It's and the real CD will come out this month, next month actually. And but yeah, the one idea for the next year is to resurrect my old quartet with Jerry Hemingway, Dieter Manderscheidt, and Walter Wirbos. Then I'm also working again more intensively with the saxophone quartet for alto, which is basically doing mainly microtonal music for alto saxophones in space. And I started composing this piece where everybody plays also percussion instruments like two sound bowls, tam-tams, one tam-tam, two sound bowls, and now a little wooden frog. Everybody has that, and now we work on possibilities to play only with the left hand saxophone and do percussion at the same time on the right hand. And I composed some stuff which needs a lot of practice because it's juggling with the materials, like playing a bit, taking the stick, hitting the percussion, playing the next pitch, and everything is timed. So that's one aspect. Yeah, that's another thing. So it's a saxophone quartet, my quartet. Then the free projects, which I still try to go on. I have this duo with Sebi Tramontana, trombone player from Sicily who lives in Munich, and we play in Italy next month. And we want to do this trio with Steve Beresford on piano. Unfortunately, he has this Brexit problem, not a Brexit problem, but the Corona problem. He has to do so many tests that he can't come to Italy because it's too expensive to do that, and he has to go in quarantine because England has still very strict rules. So, but hopefully we have a concert in Munich coming up this year. And another project, I'm trying to compose, to think, to work on new ideas. I wrote myself a very, very difficult saxophone study with 8 tones.
Right.
It's like not quarter tones, 8 tones get smaller. And I practice it almost every day for hours with the computer. And maybe in 2 years, I'm able to play it. But that for me is a step where I think when I'm really able to play that stuff and even being able to improvise that way, that would be a really step forward in my way of playing out the possibilities I have in order to play. So yeah, and just working and exploring, trying to explore new possibilities, new material. There's hopefully a solo CD coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And what else is coming out? I don't know. There's some stuff in the box. And so I hope to evolve the things and finding new ways. But I'm also lucky in Schwarz. I also play with the septet Skein, which is it's an extension of the trio I have with Achim Kaufmann and Wilbert de Jode. And there's Richard Barrett, electronics. There's Kazuo Shihashi, guitar from Japan. There's Liz Albee, trumpet, and Tony Buck on drums. So I'm happy that this band is playing again. And I have a new trio there, which will be first performance, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's with Ignaz Chick turntables and a quarter tone accordion player from Finland, Veli Kujala.
Uh-huh.
He has a custom-made quarter tone accordion. He's a contemporary music interpret, but he's also an incredible good improviser.
Okay.
And I always wanted to do something with him, and I had this open whatever I could ask for whatever I wanted, and it's a contemporary music festival in the first place. So I decided to have one project which is completely new, and the combination of accordion, turntable, and me is something I'm kind of really curious, almost curious. It's like it's basically curious, and I hope it will be great. I mean, I will definitely have a recording, though if I'm lucky, the radio records. Otherwise, I make it myself and hire somebody to record that concert, and hopefully it's good for a release, because I think that would be also something which you didn't hear so far from myself, like having a combination of turntable, quarter tone accordion, and instruments. So there's always new things coming up.
Great. So we're looking forward to it. And yeah, so I think that's it. I will just say one more thing, which is like for the audience, that you can buy the tickets for the festival at Go Out, and you can find more information at the website of Just Goes to Town, which is jgtt.cz. So thank you, Frank, a lot for a wonderful interview, and we're looking forward to meet you at the festival.
I'm
And
looking forward to.
have a great time, and see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.